So today we have Kyahn Daraee from Oregon Health and Science University School of Dentistry. Kyahn, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. And so if you can, please give us a brief summary of your dental school journey. So basically where you're from, where you went to undergrad, what you major in, and did you take a year off?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm from Portland, Oregon, just like a suburb outside of it. Went to school at Oregon State University, which is like an hour and a half south. So all this school, and I've really never found a reason to leave Oregon. I love it here. I did take a year off, like a planned gap year.
Okay.
Applied, kind of like after I graduated and all that. Got one interview, got waitlisted. So my one gap year turned into kind of like a 3-year gap. But honestly, a lot of good things happened to me along the way, and went back to school, took a few more classes at Portland State University, got a job working at a dental lab, which was awesome experience. As soon as I got into school, I knew how to mount models and like knew how to trim stuff for crowns and things like that. And yeah, so took a little bit of a different path, but hey, I'm here now, and I think I was pretty well prepared for dental school by the time I started.
And so, okay, so you've had time off. So I'm assuming you took your DAT, what, like right after you graduated, or?
So I made a little bit of a mistake, and I took it pretty early, like right after I took OChem. So I think right after my sophomore year, I just wanted to knock it out, and I was like, hey, I've been drawing these carbon rings. Let's just go for it.
Yep.
I got a decent score. I think I got like a 21.
Okay.
But then the next time I went to apply, it was going to, so not the first time, but the second time, it was going to expire like halfway through the cycle. So I didn't want to deal with that. So I just ended up taking it again.
Okay.
Did really, really, really well.
Okay.
So that was like, if I go back through the interviews, I think everyone mentioned the score. So I think that was like really instrumental in getting me interviews and getting my foot in the door.
Okay. And so, I mean, since you did do so well, could you please give our viewers a kind of like your number one tip? Of course, everybody's different, but if you could kind of say like, I know for a fact this helped me, what would that one thing be?
I promise I'm not a rep for them or anything, but DAT boot camp was money for me. I didn't really follow any of their like 8-week, 12-week, whatever thing. I think my biggest tip would be like know your study habits and like know what got you to that point, and then do that for the DAT. So like the first time I just tried to like read a Kaplan textbook, and I'm just like not a textbook person. I'm a sports guy. I just need the reps. Like I just need to get shots up. So for me doing the DAT was like find as many practice questions as I could and just do them. Like I already knew I knew the material. Like I studied it. I went back to school. I was taking like molecular bio. So I was like, all right, I don't need to go like read about the Krebs cycle again, but just questions, like especially for the perceptual ability. Like that's just practice, and like you just do that enough times and you start counting cubes in your sleep, and you knock it out. And so much of the test is kind of time based. So I felt like doing the questions, and I took a decent number of practice tests, probably like 7 or 8. And then I'd like actually go through the questions I missed, and like, whoa, like I had no idea. All right, maybe I need to brush up on that. So it gave me like a really focused way to study. Be like, oh man, you don't miss a single question about mitosis. You're good, but you're struggling on this. So I used tests for the practice and to kind of help guide my studying. And I mean, I put in like 3-4 hours a day for like a solid month and a half, kind of a overstudier. Like they had people who could like knock it out in a month, all that. I wanted to feel really comfortable going in. So I probably took like 2 months, and I just kind of dedicated. So I was going to school and working, but I just gave myself like every day from like 7 to 10, you're just going to sit down, do like one little section, and then study some stuff. And that worked for me.
See, and if you do that the first time, you don't have to retake the test,
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I tell people, I'm like, the hours that you're going to have to study, they're going to come in sometime, some way. So you might as well just do it early on. So you only have to take the test one time, and you don't have to spend that $400 and whatever amount of dollars it is, you know?
And I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, I know people who took classes and had success, but it's just like, I think by the time you're taking the DAT, you've been in school for so long and you've taken so many tests, like, you know what worked best for you.
Yep.
So I think everyone tries to like fit themselves into some box, like, oh, this person did this plan and it worked for them. But it's like, you know, if you can just sit down and read a textbook in a week and like read it once and you've got it, like, do that for the DAT. It's a test after all. So
Exactly.
whatever works for you.
Awesome, awesome. And so, because you took the years off, did you ever kind of participate in any type of like pre-dental programs that your dental school had specifically, just to kind of get your face out there and show your interest?
Yeah, so that was like part of the issue at Oregon State.
Mhm.
I never quite connected. I don't know if it was like the leadership there or whoever. Like, I mean, I knew I wanted to go to dental school from like high school. So like my first week on campus in Corvallis at Oregon State, I was like, where's a pre-dental club?
Yep.
Met with the advisor and she was like, yeah, like we have stuff around, like blah, blah, blah. And somehow, like, I mean, I'm sure I'm partly to blame for it, but like just stuff never really worked out for me. And all of a sudden I was like, oh shoot, I need this lady to write me a letter of rec and she doesn't know who I am. So I know, like, at least to get into my state school, they really care about your pre-dental advisory. But the year that I spent or year and a half I spent at Portland State taking more classes, I was in that advisor's office like once a month, checking in. Because I had just taken the DAT, I like led a DAT like night thing that we did for other pre-dents. So I got pretty involved in Portland State's pre-dent. I think it really helped because, I mean, that person is like, I don't want to say your ticket in, but they're kind of a gatekeeper and they can make your life a lot easier if they can vouch for you and be like, oh, this person really wants to get in and they've shown the interest. So I know that helped me the second time around, I should say.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. And so, DAT was good. You knew the pre-dental advisor. You knew you had the gateway. You had the key. So
Yes.
you got the interview. Can you kind of walk us through what your interview day was like?
Yeah. So I had a decent number of interviews. I would say my biggest surprise was how chill they all were. I know, at least for my school now at OHSU, it does kind of depend on who you get. So like I can just focus on theirs. So you go in, you check in with, you know, their like Office of Academic Affairs or whatever. OHSU is kind of weird. They make you write an essay, and like it's like a 20-minute. It's like, what's the last movie you watched and why would you like it, or why should I watch it, or something like that. I think mine was Arrival. I was like, I don't even could barely remember the movie. I think I fell asleep halfway through it. I was like, I don't watch a lot of movies, so we got to roll with it.
Right.
But then like they have you shadow in clinic, which is kind of cool. Like you don't really know.
That's unique. I don't think I've heard of anybody else doing that.
It was kind of funny. My interview was on a Friday, and the sectional instructor like came up to the guys doing like a class 2 filling, and he's like, all right, and you'll be done at 3:30. And the kid's like, well, like that's the goal. Our clinic starts at 2. And he goes, you'll be done at 3:30. I have a 4 o'clock tea time. I was like, all right, is this how this works around here?
A little bit of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a, you know, fall Friday, I guess. But
right.
I mean, that was a cool experience. We got to sit in a class, like same thing. I think I sat in like some like restorative class. They're talking about composite versus amalgam, and I was like, all right, like, but I mean, it's kind of cool to get that. And then the interview is like 2 20-minute interviews with faculty. And like, you know, now that I know everybody in the building, I got like 2 really chill ones. So, I mean, that can obviously vary. There's different, you know, there's a wide range of professors at every school. Some are stricter than others. So I'm sure that factored in. But I mean, I went to interviews at other schools that I don't know where they fell on the kind of like chill versus strict, but they were all like, I was definitely anticipating, kind of had ideas of like why dentistry, like what makes you different. And they weren't ever that direct. It was mostly like, what do you like to do? And kind of like talk about yourself. And then you naturally talk about things that are important to you. And I mean, I think about one interview I interviewed at Utah, and the guy was like, oh, so I'm from Beaverton, Oregon. which is the home of Nike. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, dude, you're from where Nike is. He literally said, dude. And I was like, okay. And like, I'm sure you have a lot of shoes. Like, I was like, yeah, I actually used to work at Nike, and we literally spent 20 minutes talking about Yeezys and Kanye shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, oh, shoot, interview's over. So I think if you can kind of like go in there and be flexible and just kind of like roll with it, I'd honestly say my interviews were fun. Like, they were just kind of conversations, which makes sense because part of dentistry is just being able to talk to people.
That's
And
a big part of it, honestly.
yeah,
That's a huge part.
yeah, like you just have to connect with a wide range of people. And yeah, I think, I mean, I would assume that's kind of something they're looking for.
Right.
It's like if you can't talk to people at all and you are stubborn in your interests and all that, you're going to struggle in the field. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. That's above my pay grade, but
Right.
kind of going in and not kind of having an agenda you're trying to push and just kind of go with the flow.
Right.
I think that's what they're trying to see.
And so you went on a couple of interviews. What made you ultimately choose to go to Oregon?
It was in-state. Actually, of all things, it was the last school I got into. So I was ready to move. I was kind of looking forward to it in a weird way because I, haven't left the state for school or anything. I was kind of ready for another adventure, but it's in-state tuition. My girlfriend was my fiance at the time. Her family and her job was here. So like, once the Oregon acceptance came through, it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Family and friends are all here. But, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And so how was your first year? I mean, I think that everybody has like a different experience, but at Oregon specifically, like, how were the classes? What was your schedule like? And did you all have any type of exposure to clinic?
Yeah, so I know this might be like coming up later, but I think OHSU is pretty unique in that, I didn't think this was unique, but I've had the privilege of going on a lot of like ASDA trips and conferences and stuff at school. And you start talking to a lot of other students. I don't know how it was for you, but like they got a handpiece in our hands like first term.
Wow.
Like we were putting sealants on plastic teeth. They gave us this little like block with shapes that you had to like pretty much like stay within the lines. But I think that was like the second week of school. So that was great, but it also made first year kind of challenging because not only were we taking like 8-9 classes at a time, most of which you're like, I think in college it took like a month or two to go through like the whole photosynthesis cycle. That was like a week of dental school. So it was really accelerated. I did feel like a lot of it was kind of review. It was just like really fast, a lot of different stuff. You have like 8 or 9 tests in a week. And then for us, at least, like first couple terms, you're just terrible with your hands. And it's like, it's fun, but you're like, man, I have a lot of work.
I'm nervous, yeah.
I want to practice this because that's my livelihood, but I have like 8 exams the next week. So it just became a lot to manage. But I mean, in the end, I just pretty much treated first year like, I think I was at school, like not to scare everybody away, but I think I was at school like at least 7 to 7. Like I just planned on that. I brought lunch and dinner every day. I mean, I lived pretty close to school, but I was like, if I go home and start hanging out with my dog and, I'm not going back. So, I mean, I just treated it like this is what you do. Take a couple tests. If you got a free weekend, go golf or hang out with people. But for the most part, I was like, I just got to put my head down. And OHSU kind of front loads everything. So we're pretty much full-time in clinic from spring term of our second year.
Wow.
Yeah. You have like, there's like a couple like sim clinic, like pre-clinic classes you're still taking in the spring. So you don't really have like full autonomy to do everything in clinic yet. But I mean, we're pretty much done with classes like fall of second year. So 5 terms and you're done. So it's easy to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but first year was hard. I mean, there's really no way around it.
It's always going to be. It's going to be.
I always told people, like, we always had classmates complaining about like our final schedule. And I was like, there's literally no way to like pack all these classes to like make it convenient.
Right.
Like either way you shape it, I mean, I'm just going to say it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But you get through it. It's nice that everyone's going through it together. So, you bond with your classmates that way through the bad times, through the good times. And yeah, you find groups and you just study, and, you kind of treat studying and social time, that's when you're hanging out with people. You just also
Yeah,
have.
that is the social time, right? Times in the library sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, how big is your actual class?
75.
Okay.
That's kind of like the starting number. Things happen along the way,
Yeah.
but we're, we're
Yeah,
about
it happens, unfortunately, but
we're
it
about
does.
73.
It happens. Do y'all have like an IS program? I know at our school we have like 30 students come in our second year. Do y'all have the same type of situation or?
We don't.
Okay.
So our class is pretty much the same from day one. Um, some people hang back for personal reasons and add on to classes or whatever, but no, we don't add on. So 75 is 75, and it's a little small at times, but I think I'd rather have it that way. I mean, I would say the biggest thing for me, like kind of going back to the old question about interviewing and is like, I went to a couple schools. I won't name them, but the sim clinic and their clinics, I felt like I was walking through a Costco. Like they had 200, 300 students, and you just like hand pieces whirling, like water flying. And I was like, this is a lot for me. And like, this is where I'm trying to learn. So for us, like, we're kind of like compartmentalized in all of our clinics. So you kind of feel like you're 1 of 10, and then you have an instructor right there. And I don't know, it felt more comfortable to me.
Right.
Some people might like the bigger class and all that. But 75 is, I definitely wouldn't go any smaller. Let's put it that way.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, see, I have a bigger class. At Tufts, we have about 200.
Okay.
And like you said, there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
But I definitely can see how we would have, it would have been a little bit easier if we had more individual attention from the faculty, And even though in the grand scheme, it was kind of like 1 to maybe like 15, 20, but especially in those like beginning moments, when, like you said, you're picking up this handpiece, you don't know what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
It can be a little bit nerve wracking. So I definitely see where you're coming from with that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so you mentioned that you get a handpiece pretty early. Oregon kind of front loads the academic or the didactic classes on the front end. Is there anything else that you feel like is like super, super unique to Oregon?
Yeah, I think I kind of forgot to mention it too, but kind of going back to like getting us into clinic. And I definitely appreciated schools do this, but like I think first or second term they had us doing like head and neck exams on patients, and it doesn't seem like it would be hard, but like the first time you're like looking in someone's mouth, you like don't know how far like cheeks, like you're just like so gentle and not doing anything, and then the instructor comes and be like, look, the cheeks, like you can open these up, like you're trying to look around for stuff. And I do appreciate that, because I think if the first time I was ever like looking in someone's mouth was to like look for a cavity, I'd be so overwhelmed, because believe it or not, in dental school, like the first thing, you don't really know what a cavity looks like for a couple of years.
You don't.
It's kind of crazy. You know how to like prep them out and fill them, but it's a whole nother thing, because you can't really simulate that. So I did appreciate that, first couple of terms in, we're doing head and neck exams. They have us like assisting right away. So you're getting that clinic exposure like right off the bat. And then end of first year, you're doing cleanings, like really easy prophies. And then by the time your second year's around, you can even do like some of the harder ones. So I think just kind of like babying us into clinic. So, cause like, once you start actually working with live patients, it is like, it's almost like a reset button. Like, the basics, but like everything kind of restarts and you're just like a wide-eyed, like first year again. So I think having that experience, at least you're like, oh yeah, they had us do like patient interviews where you like go through their health history and you record it and we like critique each other and stuff. So, I mean, some of that seems like busy work in the moment, and you're like, do I really have to go like ask this person about their hypertension, like in the camera, and like, what am I getting out of this? But I think it just made that transition a lot smoother, and it's kind of nice to know that the school emphasizes clinic, because that's kind of like what we're all there for. That's the experience you want to get. So it definitely helps you maximize the time that once you're in clinic, you're not worrying about talking to people and doing all that kind of stuff. And it just helps.
You've already gone through it.
Right. Yeah, I appreciated that, looking back at least.
Awesome. And so, last question of the interview.
Yeah.
If you could go back and talk to your younger self when you were actually applying, like, what's one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Yeah, this is a great question. I thought about it for a while. And I think the biggest thing, and in a weird way, I feel like fortunate to have gone through it twice because I can kind of look back. I think the biggest piece of advice I would have given myself the first time is don't force anything and just be yourself. Like, I've had the privilege of being able to like talk about this with our like dean of student affairs, someone who looks at all this stuff, and they know what's genuine and what's like
fabricated.
Yeah. And I think the first time I applied, I tried to make myself this like perfect dental school applicant. Like everything was dental related. I was like, man, I just want to like save the world one tooth at a time. And the second time I applied, I was like, this is me. These are the experiences that made me want to go into healthcare. Like it wasn't, I don't like my personal statement. I didn't even talk about dentistry. Like, and I got some feedback on that and people really liked that. Like the first time I was just like, oh, I love teeth, and just, it was like so fake looking back at it. So I think, your grades and your DAT speak for themselves. Like, so I think the biggest thing I would say was not being like redundant on your application. Like all the stuff that you fill in on your own, like experience, volunteer, work, grades, like that all tells its own story. But then you have a personal statement and you have interviews to like say who you are and be real. And that's what they're looking for. And they're not looking for anything specific. Like they don't want 75, biology maybe 4.0 and like all have these like stock, like robot answers. So yeah, the second time I applied, I just remember like going through my application. It just felt real. Like nothing was forced. Nothing was done for the sake of like building an application. It was just like, here's me, hopefully you like it enough to give me one of the spots. And yeah, if I would have known that the first time, who would know? Who knows? But
no, I mean, great piece of advice. Yeah, I think a lot of people are I don't want to say afraid to be themselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that might be what it is, and I mean, I felt the same exact way when I applied. But it gets to a point where, especially in dental school, I think that we're able to talk, going against that, where it's just like, you want to be unique because like you said, everybody's a bio major. Everybody, everybody's shadowed. Everybody's done all these things and are putting what you expect them to put on their experiences and their personal statements. So if you're able to stand out, that goes a long, long way, especially if you don't have the best DAT and the best GPA. Like you have to stand out. So
yeah, hey, number one guy here, like 3.4 GPA. Like I mean, there's so many layers to the application. Like you kind of have to speak to your strengths. Like I knew my GPA is not my ticket through the door. So that's why I took the DAT really seriously the second time. And I remember like, it's this fine line with that personal statement where like, you're trying to be different, but like, you don't want to be forced. And like, I got fortunate because I got to like work in cancer research. And just to kind of like quickly share my personal statement, the first line was bacon, lettuce, and tomato. And a bunch of interviews I went to, people were like, we were hooked. And it was all about the guy who I met and worked with who had oral cancer and couldn't open his mouth. He had trismus and had this little device that would help like build the muscle strength back up to open. And one day he like looked at me in tears and was like, my wife grows tomatoes and bacon, lettuce, and tomato is my favorite sandwich. I just want the BLT. And I was like, that's what this is about. Like, you can try to like save lives and do all that, but sometimes it's as simple as like, I don't care how long I have on this earth. I just want to eat a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. And it's like, it's stuff like that I think you can bring to the table and show like, I've had these experiences, which is why I'm here, versus I just want to help people and fix teeth. It's like, it's a fine line, but I think the more things you do and the more things you get exposed to and that build you, those are the things they want to hear about. And if you can kind of be creative in how you present it, I think it goes a really long way and can make up for a lot of, you know, areas of your application which may not be as strong, because you have like 1,000 to 1,500 students who are excellent. So every school is tasked with picking like, you know, 100 to 200 of those. So you got to do what you can.
You have to. You have to. Kyahn, thank you so much. It's been very informative, very some great pieces of advice throughout the entire interview. If any of our viewers actually want to ask you, you know, a question specifically, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
You know, any social media platform or my email, you know, KyahnnD@gmail.com. I'm happy to help out, you know, especially now sitting at home.
Right, yeah, this is
plenty of time, so there's only so much Call of Duty and puzzles that I can do before I need something else. So
right.
Awesome. Email or social media. I'm here to answer any questions and happy to help.
And of course, we'll put those both in the description box below. But once again, Kyahn, thank you so much from the FutureDDS family. We really do appreciate, you know, your time, even though, of course, you have a little bit more now, but we still appreciate it, you know.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That was fun.
Awesome. Everybody, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. And if you have any questions for us over at FutureDDS, make sure you shoot us a DM @_FutureDDS, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But until next time, see y'all later.